All right, so now we're going to officially start. Good morning, everyone, or I think some of you might be tuning in from elsewhere in the world, so good night, good afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I think you guys are going to have a lot of fun with this teaching English in Southeast Asia. At least I'm going to try and make it fun for you guys. I'm not sure if anyone has ever participated in a webinar, but I'll kind of go through the structure of what we're going to do and what we're going to discuss today in just a little bit. A little bit about me. My name is Erin. I am a student affairs advisor here at International TEFL Academy. My history, I taught in France, and then I made the plunge over to Asia, where I taught in Asia for 4 years. I got to travel extensively. It has a very special place in my heart, so I'm really excited to talk to you. I've been to almost all of these countries, seen them firsthand, so yeah, I'm excited to talk to you about these and talk to you about the market. You'll see some are a little bit different than others, which we'll go through. If you guys have any questions throughout this process, feel free to type them in the chat box. If I don't get to them during that slide, it's because I'm going to do a Q&A at the end, and I'd like to spend a little bit more time on the question that you asked. So don't worry, I am not ignoring you. I definitely will be getting to all those questions. Like I said, I like to do a little Q&A at the end. If at any time, like I said, we're going to have a storm. If my mic cuts out or anything like that, just let me know. We'll do a little pause while we get reconnected and things like that, just in case we lose internet. But yeah, if you guys are ready, we'll go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, so hopefully everyone can see my screen right now. All right, teaching English in Southeast Asia. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about visas today. I'm sure you guys all know what a visa is, at least what a tourist visa is. This basically is what allows you to visit a country. If you are unfortunate to be from the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, things like that, a lot of our passports allow us to just enter a country and we get a stamp, and that stamp is that tourist visa. You'll see that in Southeast Asia, some allow you to get the stamp, some you have to get in advance, a tourist visa in advance, like Vietnam, which we'll discuss. In some countries, you may be working on a tourist visa. However, the good thing about Asia is a lot of times you can actually get that proper work visa or work permit or business visa, which we'll discuss for each country. That obviously allows you to work legally in these countries. And some people actually like to, go and study the language, or maybe they want to go to Thailand to study Muay Thai. That would get you a student visa. The cool thing about student visas is in the majority of countries, you're actually allowed to kind of work part-time while studying. So these are all the options that you could possibly be teaching on in Southeast Asia. Like I said, we're going to go over each country specifically, so no worries. As I mentioned before, our breakdown, we're going to be discussing Southeast Asia. We do have other webinars based on South Korea and Japan, as well as Hong Kong, China, and Taiwan, but we're going to focus only on Southeast Asia today. We also do webinars for Europe and Middle East and Latin America as well. So stay tuned for posts and for those types of webinars that we do. But like I said, today we're going to be focusing on Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. Okay, so a little bit of an overview of Southeast Asia. Obviously, in Asia, you always hear there is a very large demand. That is so true. It probably has one of the largest demands in the world for the whole continent of Asia when it comes to teaching English. And what's great is the majority of these countries actually hire year-round. So they don't have very specific hiring seasons as, say, Latin America or Europe. So if you're flexible or you have, things that you need to do, don't worry. Southeast Asia and Asia in general is always going to be there for you. Typical contract lengths are usually 10 months to a year. However, there are some exceptions, especially in places like Cambodia or Vietnam, which are growing markets. People have been able to find 6 months. Obviously, they do want that full year commitment, but if you are looking for something a little bit more flexible, not sure how long you want to stay abroad, Southeast Asia might be a good option for you. Like I mentioned, we already talked about the hiring seasons, and the majority of ESL positions in Southeast Asia, it's actually, we say it'll be adults in private language institutes. That's for majority of the countries. However, if you're looking to teach children, there's actually a lot of opportunity in Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia. Okay, so if you're looking to do kids, to work with kids, I completely understand. That's who I love working with as well. You might want to gravitate towards those more to the west of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. Okay, now a big draw to Asia obviously is the money. You know, there definitely is possibility to save money in Southeast Asia, in all of Asia. There's some powerhouses, and a lot of people don't know that, but there are definitely some options here. Not all countries, some of them are going to be a little bit more break even or things like that, but there are definite possibilities to save money, which is a big draw for Southeast Asia. All right. When it comes to degrees, a lot of people have questions. You know, often you hear that you need to have a BA plus your TEFL certificate. Good thing is in Southeast Asia, there are some definite exceptions, including Cambodia, Myanmar, and Laos. They will hire you if you have only your high school diploma and a TEFL certificate. They do like you to have some experience as well, but you know, they understand that, you know, not all great teachers have a degree. And then age. That is definitely a big thing when it comes to Southeast Asia, just Asia in general. Unfortunately, ageism does exist. A lot of it occurs because of saving face. In some of these countries, it's very disrespectful to ever talk back to someone who's older than you. So if you have a boss who's younger than you, and they have to reprimand you or, you know, give you, you know, criticize you, it's really hard for them. So they prefer to hire people who are younger. All right, so definitely the majority of employers prefer teachers under the age of 40. However, don't worry, there are opportunities for older teachers, especially if you have teaching experience, you have a couple of years of teaching experience or advanced degrees. You know, so things like Thailand, Vietnam, there are going to be some options for you, even Cambodia. Okay, everyone, like I said, we're gonna break down into the different countries. If at any time you have any questions or you can't see the screen, please let me know. Just type it in the chat box. Like I said, if I don't get to your questions now, I will definitely be going over them at the end during a Q&A. Okay. All right, so the first country we're going to talk about is Cambodia. And Cambodia, to me, I think is such a hidden gem of Asia. It's often very overlooked compared to Vietnam and Thailand. It's definitely not as built up as either of these two, especially Thailand. But, you know, it has such an amazing culture. And with Cambodia, it is definitely an emerging market, meaning it's growing. It's not as expansive as Vietnam or Thailand. It hasn't been around as long, but more and more resources are going into teaching English. As a result, you can definitely get hired year-round in Cambodia. And as I mentioned before, because it's a growing market, it's more of a face-to-face market, meaning that you're going to be going on the ground and interviewing in person. Are there exceptions? 100%. There are some schools now that are going to hire in advance, you know, via things like Dave's ESL Cafe and other job boards, which I'll show in just a little bit. But typically, this is what you're going to do because oops, excuse me. Sorry, guys, my computer's, can you guys see my screen? All right, sorry. Sorry about that. So you can get hired face-to-face in Cambodia because internet is not as popular there. It's still growing, so they don't have websites and things like that. So you're going to hear of so many more schools on the ground in Cambodia than you'd actually ever would in advance on the internet. You can't just like Google all these schools. They're just not going to show up. All right, so that is why it's typically a place where you interview face-to-face. The visa that you'll be working on is called a business visa. So this is probably one of the most lax countries that you can actually get a business visa in. You can actually get it at the airport. It's like $50. You show up, you just need to have, you know, some photos and things like that. If you have a contract, you can get it, but you can actually get a business visa without a contract. They'll give it to you, just say that you're going to look for work. It's pretty cool. All right. If not, you can enter as a tourist visa. That's even cheaper. That's 25 bucks. And then you can work with the school who will then get you the proper business visa. The great thing about Cambodia is no BA required. Okay, so if you don't have a BA or higher, don't worry. As long as you have your TEFL certificate, you will find jobs in Cambodia. And another perk is non-native English speakers are a-okay. As long as you are fluent in English, you're going to be just fine finding a job. I have quite a few speakers of their native language is Spanish speaking over there or Russian, and they were able to find jobs easily because, like I said, Cambodia is often overlooked. All right. Now, with Cambodia, the great thing is it's a really low cost of living, meaning the startup costs are really low. You know, just when you're first starting, typically you're not going to get paid for your first month that you start. So we say be ready to, you know, not get your first paycheck for the first 6 weeks that you're there. And you can earn anywhere up to $700 to $1,000 a month, okay, which means you actually have opportunities to save. Not a lot, you know, maybe a couple $100, but it is possible in a place like Cambodia because the cost of living is so cheap. Like I remember, you know, food being like a couple dollars while I was there, and water 30 cents, and, you know, beer $1, you know, so that's quite nice. The cost of living is quite low. It's simple. And like I said, with Cambodia, it has a special place in my heart because it has gone through such you know, a terrible history and recent history with the Khmer Rouge and Pol Pot and things like that. So they're still really recovering. When they killed everyone who was ever educated, they were left with 1/3 of the population with no education. And that's why they're starting to pour that money into education and really valuing teachers and having them come in. So it's not going to be, you know, easy at first, but it's truly a gem. The people are the kindest people you'll ever meet. And we have a lot of resources for you guys to review. Like we have Cambodia School Finder, how to find a job. I'm going to quickly go over our resources just so you guys can see the kind of resources that we have. So I'm not sure if you guys can see my screen. I'm going to try and see if you guys can see. Okay. Here we go. Hopefully you guys can see. Here is our job search guidance manual. It is chock full of everything you need to know, all the different countries that you could possibly see in. All right, yeah, it just takes a second when I say I'm changing it. So here's the link to the job search guidance manual. If you haven't seen it before, like I said, it's 450 pages, and it has a breakdown of all the different countries that you could possibly teach in. So we're talking about Cambodia right now. I click Cambodia. Here's a little bit of information about Cambodia, country overview, job overview, what it's like to work there, okay, things like that that you guys can look at afterwards. We also have school finders for every single country that we're going to talk about today. So here's our ITA language school finders list. I'm sending these all to you in the chat box. Just make sure you click them and save them, bookmark them. They're great resources. They're also found in the job search guidance manual as well. But this is a breakdown of all the different schools. So if I say go to Asia, let's check out the Cambodia school finder. Here is our Cambodia school finder. So these are all of the schools that we know of currently in Cambodia. Are there more? 100% yes, because remember, as I said, a lot of them don't really have websites or Facebook or anything to even promote these schools. So when you're on the ground, you're just going to see English schools everywhere. You can kind of click what you're interested in, like Phnom Penh, the capital, and here are all the schools that we know of in Phnom Penh. So we do this for every country. You're going to see that as we go through all the different countries, okay? But I just want to show you right off the bat, every country we talk about, Vietnam, Thailand, we'll all have those. Okay. All right. Cool. So moving on from Cambodia is Indonesia. Now, when everyone thinks of Indonesia, they think of beautiful islands, Bali, things like that. It is certainly a beautiful country, another place where the people are so kind. And the cool thing is, again, they have year-round hiring. All right, the thing about Indonesia is It's a little bit more difficult to work. That is because a couple years ago, the government decided to make this mandate where you had to have 5 years of teaching experience in order to receive the VITAS and the KITAS, which is basically their work permit. What happened is every single teacher who was working there almost didn't have 5 years, so they all had to leave, and there was a huge teacher shortage. So the government had to retract that 5-year statement. They're like, okay, we need teachers. You don't need to have 5 years of experience. However, you'll still see that some schools will ask, do you have the 5 years of experience? So this is kind of a place where it's definitely a little bit more competitive. It's not as easy for first-year teachers, except with EF, English First or Education First, depending on which website you go to. They are known to hire first-year teachers. So if you're interested in working in Indonesia, that's a really good route to take, unless you have a couple years of experience under your belt. The great thing about Indonesia is you can actually get a work permit here. So what happens is if you get hired in advance, so say with a company like EF, you get a limited stay visa, which is called the VITAS. Okay, this allows you to enter legally, and then you have to change it into a residence permit called the KITAS within 3 days. Sometimes there's a little leeway. Your school will help you assist that, but that basically gives you a resident permit, very similar to if you were in like China, which also requires you to have that residence permit. The good thing is, if you're finding a job on the ground, you can convert your tourist visa. So you get a visa on arrival. Again, that's about like $20 if you are from the US or Canada. I think it's the same if you're UK or Australian, but you'd have to do some work on that. You get 30 days, and then you can just go to a neighboring country like Malaysia or Singapore, or actually, depending on where you are, Australia is not that far, which is a little bit more expensive, but you can then convert your tourist visa into that VITAS and KITAS, which is pretty cool. All right, some requirements, as I mentioned before, if you you have to have a BA to work in Indonesia. That is a hard stop. You have to have that. There's no exceptions. And like I mentioned, they really prefer you to have a degree in education or something related. If you don't, that's where they want that experiences and that they want you to have experience, which is why they brought in that 5-year rule, which didn't work out so well. And they want you to have a TEFL certificate. And because your contract is going to be for 1 year, you need to have a passport with 18 months validity, meaning if you have 10 months left on your passport, you have to get a new one. They are very strict about this so that you don't have to get multiple visas. They won't issue multiple visas if your passport expires within your year contract. Okay, just like Cambodia, it's actually a relatively low startup cost. It is very cheap in Indonesia. And this is a place where, yeah, you may be able to save a couple $100 because you get paid anywhere between 700 to 1100 USD. Okay. Indonesia. All right, Laos. So this is part of the Golden Triangle that kind of makes up Vietnam, Thailand, and Laos, obviously. And Laos is often, again, very overlooked except for tourists. It is definitely a beautiful country. It is definitely going to be the one that's going to be the hardest to find an actual paying job. At this time, majority of the positions are going to be volunteer, volunteering at different schools or, doing short programs. So you're not really going to be making money. However, we do think that this is going to change within the next 10 years just based on what's happened in Cambodia, because more and more tourists are going there. There's a big need for tourism English, things like that. So we would not be surprised if in the next 10 years it's going to become the new Cambodia, which is why we're going to discuss it today. You can definitely get hired year-round. There are programs year-round, there are volunteer options, and there are some schools that do hire, especially in the capital of Vientiane. So it is still possible. Like we see some positions once in a while on like a TEFL board or something like that, which I'll kind of show you in just a little bit. Definitely, this is going to be a place where it's face-to-face, because you're going to hear of more schools on the ground and see if they're hiring. Again, pretty lax when it comes to visas, very similar to Cambodia. You'll get a 30-day tourist visa on arrival. Just make sure that you have your 2 passports, size photos, and $35 for your visa fee. And you can get it in advance in 60 days if you apply through a Laos embassy or consulate. But most people just kind of show up, pay that $35 fee to get the 30-day. Now, again, if you are volunteering, you're going to be volunteering solely on a tourist visa, which means you might, if you want to do like a 60-day stint, you might have to leave and come back. That's pretty common. Maybe if you're in an international school in Laos, because they do exist, international schools, then you would probably be getting that business permit, which is similar to Cambodia. But right now, like I said, this is kind of a emerging market. You can see, despite the fact that it's not as built up as Cambodia or Thailand, cost of living is a little bit higher. You can get paid a little bit more, especially if you are in one of those international schools. But like I said, stay tuned. Within the next 5-10 years, I think Laos is really going to explode. All right, Malaysia. All right, Malaysia is again one of those Southeast Asian countries touching Singapore, very close to Indonesia. And this is a country where you can also get hired year-round. However, like Indonesia, it's very interesting because it is a very, very competitive market. Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, those are going to be the 3 most competitive markets. Reason being, English is spoken in all of these countries. A lot of people don't know that, but yes, obviously English is one of the official languages of Singapore, Malaysia and Indonesia, it is up there. So there's actually not as much of a demand as most people think. However, there are still definitely schools, especially if you're interested in teaching adults, because there are business English schools and, you know, potentially university positions or just like schools for adults that are in a place like Malaysia, especially in KL, Kuala Lumpur, because it's really trying to become the next business hub of Asia. In Malaysia, you can get hired face-to-face while you're visiting, or you can get hired in advance. It is one of those countries where it's possible to do both. And most schools will assist in obtaining the employment pass. So the employment pass is their version of the work visa. It's really cool because it gives you the right to live and work there for 2 years. So you don't, if you decide to stay in Malaysia, you don't have to continuously renew your visa. Like I remember when I was in Asia, I had to renew my visa every year. It was kind of annoying. You know, this one automatically gives you for 2 years, even if you don't stay for the 2 years. However, you may see some schools give you a contract that wants you to stay for the 2 years. Hey, they're paying for that visa for you to stay for 2 years. They kind of want you to. So that is something to note when looking through contracts. They might ask you to stay for 2 years. Okay, just like Indonesia, a degree is absolutely required, and they do kind of prefer those with masters or, you know, who have advanced credentials or university degree plus several years of experience along with your TEFL certificate. All right. Now, one of the draws to Malaysia is obviously it's going to be a little bit higher of a cost of living compared to Indonesia or Cambodia. However, it is still relatively cheap. And there are some opportunities to save some money in Malaysia. Like I said, because they revere teachers who have experience and things like that, they'll pay a little bit more money for those who have that experience, which is quite cool. So you can earn anywhere between 1,200 and 2,300 USD per month. As I mentioned before, we have school finders for all. Something else I didn't mention before is we also have how to find job documents. So this is basically when looking at, I'm going to show you guys the manual again. So say we're back in Cambodia. We have steps on finding a job in Cambodia. Say, pretend this is Malaysia we're talking about. You can show your how to find a job. Whoop. And it kind of goes down and breaks down the steps of what you need to do when working in Cambodia. Okay, does this work for you? This is what you need to do, step 4, step 5, step 6. So we do this for all the countries as well. So I highly recommend checking that out on your countries of interest after this. Okay, good. Perfect. I'm going to make sure you guys can see my screen again. Okay. All right. You guys are a quiet group this morning. All right, Myanmar. So Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. Okay, is definitely another market that's emerging, very similar to Laos and Cambodia. It's probably in the middle of both of Laos and Cambodia. Okay, just because it recently became open to majority of tourists. It's still one of those countries that you need to do your research on. Obviously, there's still some like economic and political strife going on there. So just make sure you do your research, but it is a really cool country. It's beautiful, has a very fascinating history, has thousands and thousands of temples if you're into that, and the people are some of the nicest, just in general in Asia, in Southeast Asia, the people are so kind. So a little bit different than some of the other ones. They do have more of a peak hiring season, which is May to September, so that you can actually start when schools start in September. However, it is possible to get a job year-round. As I mentioned before, it's very much overlooked compared to some of those other countries, so there will be positions available throughout the year. This is a country where you can actually get hired in advance. It's a little bit, you can technically find a job on the ground. It's not as likely because they want you to process everything in advance typically. The visa that you'll actually work on, and this is new, this never existed until a couple years ago and they're still trying to figure it out, is a business visa that could be possibly turned into a work visa. So you always got to check with your embassy because new rules are changing every day for Myanmar because of who they're allowing in, who they're not, things like that. So they're still trying to figure out this business visa because they've never had foreigners coming in to work in Myanmar. So that's why it's a really interesting time to kind of go to Myanmar. A BA and or a BS is preferred. They really do want you to have that degree. However, there are some exceptions if you only have a high school degree. And you can make up to 1,000 to 2,000 US dollars per month, which actually goes such a long way in a place like Myanmar. Now, something that you need to be prepared is it's still a developing country, meaning similar to like maybe Nicaragua or Cuba, there are going to be, people who there are going to be times where there's no power and internet is going to be a little bit more scarce. So if you're looking for more of that rugged adventure when it comes to teaching, Myanmar is definitely going to be an option. It's really cool. Like I said, if you can deal with, it's going to be hot. Like I said, though, you might not have air conditioning, you might not have internet, things like that, but it's going to be a truly rewarding experience. Okay. And the last one, and probably the most well, actually we have two more. One of the most well-known is Singapore. And this is often, most people skip over it, as I mentioned before, because Singapore obviously has English as one of their official languages. So it is very competitive and it is extremely expensive. Singapore is not a cheap country in the slightest. It means they boast some of the highest apartment costs along with London, Hong Kong, and Paris. So just be prepared. It is not for, it is not budget travel in the slightest or anything like that. The cool thing is there are year-round hiring with language centers. And there's actually the most international schools per capita in Singapore. I mean, you hear that, the genius is coming out of Singapore. It's very true. They take their education very seriously. It is typically common to get hired in advance in a place like Singapore. However, it is still possible to get hired face-to-face in Singapore because you actually get a good amount of time if you enter as a tourist, if you are from the Big Seven, US, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, things like that. South Africans have a little bit of a harder time. They get a shorter visa, but if you're from one of those, it works, okay? And there's actually 3 types of employment passes, and this actually depends on your monthly income. Weird, I know. So they have 3 tiers. Typically, teachers are on, so someone who teaches at a language school is going to be on the 3rd tier, not making as much as, finance people or things like that in business. International schools are, if you're an international school teacher, you're looking at being on a second tier or third tier, making quite a good chunk of money. We say that you can make anywhere between 2,400 to 3,000 USD per month. And I know I keep throwing around the word international school. So in Singapore, international schools are actually legitimate international schools. They're not like other schools in Asia that just slap the word international on it and they think it's international. No, these are, I mean, like the American School of Singapore, the Canadian School of Singapore, the Korean School of Singapore, you know, things like that. Those are official international schools. Those have much higher regulations that and requirements that you need to have degrees in education, you need to have experience. So those are going to be much harder to get into. However, private language institutes, those are ones where you'll be working with kids or you'll be working with adults. They just want you to have your BA, BS, that is definitely a requirement, plus your TEFL certificate. Again, they're one of those that want you to have experience just because it is so competitive in Singapore. Singapore can be competitive because the demand is not as high, and so they can be picky when it comes to their teachers. So that's usually one of those that I mentioned with Malaysia and Indonesia. Get a couple years under your belt and then think about conquering one of those countries. And last but not least, Thailand, which I think some of you guys definitely might be interested. Thailand is such a beautiful country. It is definitely, I keep saying last but not least, but I keep forgetting we switched the order. This one used to be last, so we still got Vietnam. Sorry guys, I'm getting ahead of myself. But Thailand, it obviously is a beautiful country. It is actually probably one of the most developed teaching markets in Asia because, it's been around a little bit longer. It's one of the more developed in general countries. So you'll see it's a little bit more developed than Cambodia and Vietnam and some of these other ones. Now, the thing about Thailand is it does have a little bit more specific hiring seasons. So if you're wanting to work in like a school, so it's possible to work in public schools in Thailand. It's also possible to work in a private school. Now, a private school is different than a private language institute. Private language institute means it's only an English school. Classes are only for English, like reading, grammar, things like that. The students come for an hour or two, that's it. Private schools are kind of similar to what we have here in the US, where you think of like a private Catholic school or something along those lines, where the school will teach all of the subjects and the students are there for the full day. And so you could be an English teacher at one of those schools as well. The majority of the positions in Thailand are going to be in a public school setting or a private school. Private language institutes are not as common as they are in other countries, which is a major flip compared to the majority of countries that we're talking about. Okay, so that is why the school semesters are very important. The school semesters begin in May and November, meaning that they will do their hiring in between like February and March for May, because April is kind of their like summer break. There's a big water festival, Sakran, I'm sure you guys have heard. And for November, you're typically looking at being hired in August, September. Again, October is like their summer break as well. So definitely a little bit different, not like your traditional school year. Okay, for the few private language schools that are out there, they will hire year-round. Okay, Thailand is an interesting one because it is kind of split. You can get hired in advance, or you can get hired on the ground. It's completely your own preference. I know a lot of people want to get hired in advance and they prefer that. I completely understand. That was how I wanted to go. And then we have people who are like traveling around Southeast Asia and they're like, no, I just want to be there for, when they start hiring. And they're definitely easy to find jobs because, they can just interview and get hired right away. So it just kind of depends on your preference. Great thing about Thailand is you can definitely get a work visa. It's quite a little bit of a process. You need, university degree. You need to have a clean background. So you do need to have your background check. All right. And you can process the work visa in country, which is quite nice. You have to do a visa run, a border run. So go to Cambodia or Laos, something along those lines to process your visa, but pretty simple. quite a few steps to getting that work permit. The great thing is, in Thailand, you can actually save a little bit of money. Again, you're not going to be saving like $1,000 a month like you might in China or Korea, but you definitely can save a couple $100, even more so than you do in Cambodia, which is quite nice, depending on your lifestyle. Obviously, if you are going around and eating at, Michelin star restaurants every night, things like that, it's going to cut into your savings. But as you'll see in Thailand, everywhere in Southeast Asia, beers are like $1, food $1.50, just depending, especially if you want to eat some of the local food. It's great, and you cannot go wrong with Thai food, believe me. Okay, now the last one, I promise, is Vietnam, the neighbor of Thailand. And this is definitely really growing. And as a result, this is going to be the best country where you can save the most money in most of Southeast Asia. I mean, we're seeing people save anywhere between $500 to $900, depending on where you are and how much you're working, which is pretty cool because the cost of living is dirt cheap in Vietnam. I keep making these references like $1 beer and like 30-cent, 10-cent water, things like that. Yes, like Vietnam is probably one of the cheapest countries out of all of the ones that we've talked about. And the great thing is you can get hired year round, which is really perfect. Like I've had someone who flew like on November 17th, and by November 18th, he had a job and he started on the 19th this past year, which is wild. Like that just shows you that there's a lot of demand in Vietnam. Some schools are now opening up to getting hired in advance, which is quite cool. You'll see on Dave's ESL Cafe, which I'll show you in a second, but majority prefer you to be on the ground. They know that you're going to be there, and so that you can start right away. You're not sitting there waiting around for a job. Okay, in Vietnam, you are going to get a work visa, a work permit. You can enter as a tourist visa and convert that into a work permit in Vietnam, which is pretty cool, or you can process everything in advance in your home country if you're hired in advance. Okay, but most people just go to Vietnam and they turn their work visa or turn their tourist visa into a work permit. All right, as I mentioned before, you can get anywhere between 1,100 to 1,700 USD a month, and with costs of living being anywhere between like 600 and 1,100, you can see you can save quite a bit of money. Vietnam is, however, one of those countries that absolutely require a bachelor's or a BS. That is a requirement for the work visa. There are some people who might be working there on a tourist visa without a degree. That is not something we recommend, like we do in, say, like Europe or Latin America. It is still possible, but like I said, that is not something that we would advise you on. So you need to have that degree in your TEFL certificate in order to work in Vietnam. All right, guys, so some additional resources. Something that I wanted to talk to you guys about is, kind of job boards. Like, where do you even go for these kind of things? So I'm going to show you guys my screen again. Obviously, check out our school finders and how-to docs and things like that. We also have some cool links like our preferred recruiters list. So this is basically recruiters that we have personally vetted out. We make sure that they're a good fit, that they do not discriminate and things like that. And, they will hire our students because they like the quality of teachers that we're producing. So here we have a bunch for Asia. So just say, let's go to Thailand, for instance. Here you go. Here are a bunch of recruiters that we've personally vetted out that we know of for Thailand. Are these all of them? No, definitely not. There are going to be a lot more out there. Just do your research. All the recruiters that we work with, they will not be taking any chunk of your salary or anything like that. They should not be charging you a fee. There are some exceptions with programs, like Greenheart Travel does programs as well for some of them, so they will have a little bit of a fee, but that's a little bit different. The rest of our recruiters, they should not be charging you any kind of fee. So I'm sending our preferred recruiters list in the chat box. Here you go. All right, 7 years experience. All right, you're perfect. I'm seeing that now. Fantastic. So that's the preferred recruiters list. We also have a list of schools that are our preferred are associated schools. So these are schools, again, that we have vetted out personally or that our alumni have worked for and really, really enjoyed working for, so they've recommended them. So you can see we have it for every country as well. I'm going to send that to you guys in the chat box as well. These are our associated schools to check out. And you can see that, like, you know, going to say Vietnam, here we go, APACS, Clever Learn, Education, ILA, things like that. These are all different options for you that we have personally vetted out or that our students have vetted out and really enjoy. All right, the last one that I'm going to show you is Dave's ESL Cafe. All right, now I'm not sure if anyone has been on this. It looks like a janky site from the 90s because it is a janky site from the 90s. However, don't let what it looks like deter you. This is actually a fantastic resource. It's how I found my job for Asia, so I'm a little partial to it. But yeah, it hasn't updated since the 90s when it was created, but the thing is, it just works so well, it doesn't really need to. All right, so you can see this is their typical job list. So it'll be from all over the place. The only ones that won't be included are Korea or Japan, or Korea or China, because they have their own job boards. But you can see from anywhere from like Hong Kong to Kuwait. But you can sit here and be like, okay, I want to search for schools in Thailand. All right, look at that. There's 27 postings for schools in Thailand. You know, so it's kind of a cool resource just to see what's out there. All right, and this is where sometimes you'll find those jobs for Cambodia or maybe Laos or Myanmar, which I said aren't as common. This would be a good place to look if you're trying to find a job in advance in those countries. Okay. Going back to our PowerPoint real quick, hopefully you guys got a chance to see all that. Obviously, another fantastic resource are Facebook groups. So let me take you to those and send you the link as well. Okay, whoops. All right, so here's the Facebook groups. I clearly need to check my, my notifications. I don't know if you guys can see. All right, here we go. Here's our Facebook groups. We have Facebook groups for every single country that there is that you can possibly teach in. So say that you wanted to go to Thailand. Here we go. Whoop, there you go. Here's the Thailand Facebook group. And this is a great way to connect with alum who are currently in these countries, you know, like, hey, my school's hiring if anyone's looking for something, you know, things like that. It's a great resource to, you know, look into these and just connect with people, or maybe like, hey, I'm moving to Cambodia on this date. Anyone want to be a roommate in Phnom Penh? You know, something along those lines. So really good resource if you guys aren't on that already. I'm going to send that to you guys in the chat box as well. Okay, hopefully you guys can see. Here we go. And I already showed you our associated schools, things like that. So those are some additional resources for you guys to peruse. Obviously, there's a lot of different things out there. It can get a little overwhelming, so don't worry. The Student Affairs Department is here to help you set up an appointment. If you guys want to chat with someone about your job search, that's exactly what we're here for. Whether you want to do it email, via Skype, via phone call, we're happy to do that for you and kind of walk you through the best steps for finding a job in Southeast Asia or wherever else you are looking to teach in the world. You're stuck with us. We're more than happy to assist you. All right, guys, so I know that was quite a long presentation. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me, especially if you guys are, you know, here in the US, it's pretty early in the morning, or if you guys are in Asia, I know it's pretty late at night. I'm going to go ahead and sit here in case anyone has any questions and do a quick Q&A at the end. If not, you guys are more than welcome to go ahead and leave. Thank you guys for being such a great audience today. I know there's just a couple of us, but I really appreciate it. Like I said, this one is being recorded, so if there's anything you missed, which is totally possible, you'll definitely be able to see this again. We'll be posting this on our live lecture and webinar document that you can find on Moodle. All right, guys, like I said, I'm going to stop recording. If you have any questions, just let me know.